Welcome to Love and Abuse, the show about navigating the difficult relationship. From simple disagreements to emotionally abusive behaviors, you deserve respect and kindness. All the information on this show is meant for educational purposes only. Always seek a professional for your mental health and well-being, and always pick your battles wisely. I'm your host, Paul Coliani. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Love and Abuse. If this is your first time, welcome to the show. And if you are returning, welcome back. And I hope you get some value. In this episode, we're going to get right into the question that somebody sent me. This person wrote, "Thank you for your podcast. It's given me so much relief so many times through the process of waking up to abuse. I have a question regarding the episode that you created called, 'Should You Give In to Their Perception of You?' You talked about how the abuser uses the silent treatment and that they probably have things they want to tell you and they feel that they can't say it or they can't say those things. I have heard you talk about this many times and it's very interesting and thought-provoking. It leads me to a question I would really love for you to respond to. When you say that what they really want to tell us is probably something that may sound bad, selfish, or even mean, this makes sense to me because it shows how more covert abusers probably carry some thoughts and feelings that are very similar to the more overt abusers who verbalize their thoughts and feelings more. So my question to you is, what does the abusive person have to do to change on a deeper level, to change those thought patterns and feelings? Because I realize that this is really what would need to happen, right? If the abuser decides to be honest and open instead of just treating you with the silent treatment, then that would probably feel even more abusive, right? Because the things they want in the relationship may be selfish and even mean, and the other person would feel even more abused. The abuser can even justify their silent treatment by telling themselves that they are, quote, protecting you, right? Your thoughts? Thank you for sharing this. And yes, this is a deep question. In fact, it's actually difficult to put into words exactly what needs to happen inside the emotionally abusive person in order to change this about themselves. The reason it's difficult is because it's a multi-step process. It's a very difficult process to change something that you've been doing most of your life. Now, as a former emotionally abusive person and somebody who really specialized, unfortunately, in the silent treatment, I understand what it takes to get from there to where I am today. How I got to this place in my life, instead of withholding love, withholding my thoughts, withholding my feelings and what I really wanted to express, how I got from there to here is actually one step that I took. I just took one step. I talk about this in an article I wrote a while back, but the one step that I took was asking myself if the other person never, ever changed, would I be okay with it? That was it. I asked myself that question. So, for example, I didn't like when I was married, I didn't like when my wife would eat sweets. So what? Eat sweets. Who cares? That's how I feel now. Doesn't bother me now. But back then, oh my God, if she eats sweets, she's going to gain weight and I'm not going to be attracted to her anymore. And so I would go silent because I really wanted to say, I don't want you to be fat and ugly. I hate to admit that. I really do. It's embarrassing. I feel terrible for even thinking that back then. But that's where I was and that's who I was. That's what I was thinking. I don't want her to be fat and ugly because if she is, it's going to affect me and I'm not going to be attracted to her anymore. And I want to be attracted to her, so she shouldn't be doing those things. But I can't say that. I can't say stop eating junk food because you're going to be fat and ugly, because that's mean. Even I knew it was mean back then, but I thought those things. I had those thoughts. And instead of being direct and expressing those things, which, like this person says, it would have been abusive. Absolutely. It would have been mean. It would have been something a caring person wouldn't do. I was trying to be caring. I didn't know how to be caring. I didn't know how to be supportive. But I held those things in. And because when I saw her eating junk food, for example, this is one example of probably several I can name, but this is one of the things that happened in our relationship when we were together. I would get these thoughts, I would get these feelings, and then I would be afraid that she would be, in my words back then, fat and ugly. That was my fear back then. And I would have this fear and be triggered by it, and I would be upset, and I would be angry, and I would be silent. I would go silent because I didn't want to tell her why I really didn't want her eating junk food. By staying silent, I thought that was, again, this is a dysfunctional and toxic way to think, but I thought that was better than saying those awful things. The problem was, it was toxic, it was dysfunctional to go silent because she had no idea where I was inside my head. I would just disappear emotionally. I would disconnect. I would be hurt inside me. I would be angry inside me. I would be sad. I would be fearful, highly insecure. That's where I was. I was highly insecure. Because if she becomes unattractive to me, what am I going to do then? I'm stuck. That was my fear, and it was a compounding fear. And every time I thought about it, it just got worse and worse inside my head. So instead of becoming overtly abusive and hurtful, I chose the covert route, which was always what I did because I preferred to avoid conflict. I preferred to manipulate silently. I preferred to do what I could without actually saying. It was a very passive-aggressive, silent manipulation, silent control. And when I did that, she would dote on me more. She would try to please me. She would try to figure out where I was. And the secondary gain with all that is that I loved the extra attention. I loved being doted on. I loved that she gave me her focus, that I was her center of attention and not sweets and not other things that I was upset about. She focused on me. She put all her energy toward me. And so I was draining her by using the silent treatment. It's embarrassing talking about this. It really is. But I have to be transparent about it. I think it can be helpful to know this point of view, because some people do this as a method of control. And back then I didn't know it was controlling. I just thought, how else am I going to tell her this without getting her upset, without being a jerk, without being mean, not realizing what I was doing was probably just as awful. I mean, when you're overt about how you feel and you say, well, you're just gaining all this weight and you eat so much junk food, that is overt abusive behavior. It is harmful. It is showing the other person that they are unimportant, they don't matter, and all that matters is that they do what you want them to do. And so, coming back to this person's question, this is what I was trying to accomplish. I was trying to get her to change. I was trying to control her behaviors by withholding love, withholding attention, and the real reason was to try to make her feel guilty for what she was doing. So when I was this way, when I was giving somebody the silent treatment, I would want them to feel guilty enough to stop their behavior. Period. That was it. I wanted her to feel guilty enough to stop her behavior. Very selfish, very toxic, but that's who I was back then. And now, today, I'm completely different for the reason that I'm going to share with you now. I finally started to realize what I was doing. You know, my marriage was starting to fail. We were getting separated, but I didn't know it was a real separation. I thought she was just taking some time off and finding herself again. But what she needed was to get away from me. And that was a really good decision on her part. So she left for a while. And during that time when I was alone, I finally turned on empathy. I finally said, you know, what would it be like if I were her? And seeing me go silent and not knowing where that person over there was in his head and feeling like we were disconnected. But I cared about that person so much that I tried to figure out where they were and told that person I'm there for them. But I could never get through. And it felt like they were depressed or something was wrong that I couldn't help them with. And when I tried that on, when I tried being her, that's when my empathy really started to kick in, and I felt awful. I felt so bad that I did this to someone so caring and so kind and so supportive of me. I withheld love and affection and attention from her, and she didn't deserve it. And so I started feeling sick thinking about this. I mean, literally, I was feeling like I was going to throw up. And I tried being her in all these other scenarios that I was doing emotionally abusive behavior. And again, I felt sick to my stomach. I finally understood what she was going through when I did what I did back then. So being her, pretending to be her, and seeing me over there sulking and moping and silent and saying nothing's wrong, I'm okay, I was like a moping child that couldn't be satisfied because he didn't get what he wanted for Christmas, because he was so spoiled or something like that. That's how I felt when I saw myself, I separated from myself and saw myself over there doing that, and then pretended to be my wife trying to get through to me, and I couldn't. And so I felt what it was like to be her, and then I felt what it was like to be me, knowing that I was hurting her in this way because I had never thought about it in that way before. And that really highlighted something for me. It really highlighted that I was doing these behaviors, most of them unconscious. I didn't even realize that I was emotionally abusive. I didn't even know that term back then. I just thought, why isn't she doing what I believe she should do? I thought to myself, why can't she just do what's right? Why can't she do what's right for us? So that's how I thought back then. I really wanted her to do what I wanted her to do, regardless of how she felt. And when I realized I was doing it back then, it hit me hard. And it needed to. It needed to hit me hard. It needed to land so that I finally got it. I finally understood that my behavior was awful and painful and destroying her. It was taking away her passion for life. I was slowly disintegrating her from the inside out. I thought I was loving her in a healthy way. I thought that my love was the greatest. I'll be honest here, that I thought my love was the greatest and I was the most caring and supportive person ever, until I finally had that alone time where I understood her perspective. I tried on who she is and how it felt to be with me when I did those behaviors. So that was very enlightening and very sickening at the same time. And I needed for that to happen. I needed it for it to happen because it was the very first step toward healing. Now, let me tell you, this person who wrote, let me tell you the key to stopping this silent treatment, stopping not being expressive. The key was asking myself, okay, let's just say that she never, ever changes. Let's just say that she never changes. She's going to eat junk food. She's going to do all the stuff that triggers me. And she's never going to stop. It's never going to stop, no matter what I do, no matter how I feel, no matter what kind of silent treatment I do, no matter how I make her feel guilty, make her feel sad. She's never going to stop. She will always do those things, no matter what. I wanted to lay out a scenario that I couldn't deny, like this was going to happen, no matter what. And then I asked myself the question, so Paul, now that you know she will never, ever change, what are you going to do now? And I had to sit there for a moment because I didn't want to believe that was true. I just said, well, that can't be true. She has to change. She has to. And so I followed up with the question, yes, but what if she doesn't? I had to face the music, really. I had to face a truth that I didn't want. So as this person who didn't want her to do these things and became emotionally abusive in certain ways, passive-aggressive ways, silent ways, covert ways, I had to face the question, what if she never changed? And what if this is who she was going to be from this point on? And I got to a place inside myself where I said, well, if she never, ever changed, then I don't know if I can be with her. And so that was the first time I had that thought come into my mind. And when I had that thought, it made me sick again. What do you mean I don't know if I could be with her? I want to be with her. I love her. That's how I felt back then. That's the kind of love I was showing. It was an unhealthy love. But that's how it felt. I felt like I loved her. And I do believe I loved her, but I was putting all these stipulations and standards on the relationship, and I didn't know what real love was. If you've been listening to me a while, you know that I now define love as supporting someone's happiness, even if you don't like their decisions, even if you don't like the decisions they make to be happy. I think that's love. I didn't feel that way back then. My version of love was, I love you as long as you do these things. So I had an unhealthy version of love. And when she didn't do those things, I made her life difficult. I made it awful for her. I made her sad. I made her depressed. I did those things to her. I have to admit that. And so when I think back to the moment I asked myself, what if she never ever changes? And I came up with the answer finally where I said, oh, I guess I'd have to leave. Man, that felt awful. I don't want to leave. I don't want to leave her. This is my marriage. I'm invested in. I love her and I don't want to lose her. What am I thinking? I can't leave. And then I had this discussion with myself. Yeah, but she's not going to change. So what are you going to do? You're just going to sit around and complain about it all the time? You're going to continue giving her the silent treatment, continue giving her the look that you give her? You're going to continue withdrawing love and affection and making her feel guilty for something that you know will never, ever change? Are you going to continue doing that, Paul? And my head started swirling. I couldn't believe I was having this conversation with myself because I'd never thought this way before. I never had a thought of, well, maybe I should leave the person instead of trying to control or change them. Maybe I should leave. This leads me to the one thing that changed everything for me. And that is knowing what my boundaries are and what my values are and honoring them. So if I really had a boundary that I didn't want to be with somebody that ate junk food, then instead of giving them crap, I should tell myself, well, Paul, if you don't like it, you should leave. Paul, if you don't like that she sits around on the couch all day, these are my words back then you should leave because that's what she wants to do. If you don't like that, you should leave. And telling myself that was the impetus that changed everything for me. Because what it did, what that line of questioning, what that line of thinking did, was make me responsible for my decisions in what I accepted in my life, instead of pointing the finger at someone else, saying that they're wrong for what they do and they're bad for what they do, taking me out of the idea of taking responsibility for my life. In other words, if I truly have a problem with somebody's behavior, I should look in myself and ask myself, do I want to be around a person that does this behavior? And then when I come up with an answer, follow through. Follow through with what I believe to be true. What I believe to be true is I don't want her eating junk food, for example. If I followed through, that would mean that, well, she's not going to change, so what am I going to do for myself? What am I going to do? What decision am I going to make? Not how am I going to change or control her. I'm finally pointing the finger back at myself and asking myself the question, what decision am I going to make now that I know she's not going to change? That's when I changed, when I decided to honor myself. Now, at that point, when I finally asked myself that question, I had this conversation in my head. I said, wait a minute, I don't want to leave. Well, then what happens now? What's next, Paul? And I came up with the thought that, well, if I don't want to leave and I have no control over what she does, and my only choice is to accept what she does, because if I stay, I can't complain because I'm choosing to stay. It's my choice. If I leave, then okay, that's my choice too, but I don't want to leave. So what happens? What do I do? My only choice at that point was to accept her for who she was and what she did. That was my only choice. If I didn't want to leave, that was my only choice. And so in that moment, I said, well, then I accept her. I accept her for everything she does, everything that used to trigger me, everything that used to tick me off. I now accept that's who she is. That's when things changed for me, was accepting that's who they are, and I can't change it. And if I can't change it and I want it to change, then I shouldn't be there. And then I'd have that conversation with myself. Yeah, but I don't want to leave. Well, you can't change her either, and you can't try to control her anymore, and you can't try to do all these covert things that you used to do. So what are you going to do? I'm going to accept her. And then I would ask myself, are you sure? Are you sure you can accept her? What if you're walking in the room and she's just finished off a whole pie and she wasn't like that? I'm just throwing that exaggeration in there. What if that was what happened? What if you walked in and she was finishing off a whole pie and finishing off a half gallon of ice cream? What are you going to do? And I felt okay. For the first time, I felt okay about it. I said, I don't care because I love her and I've chosen to accept her. And accepting somebody means that you support whatever makes them happy, even if you don't like it, even if it doesn't feel good inside of you, as long as you see the happiness in their heart, on their face. And that's where I feel like I elevated that day. I feel like as soon as I had that conversation, as soon as I came to that point where I said, well, I'm not leaving, which means I have no choice but to accept her, it changed me. It changed so much about me. I mean, I still had a lot of healing to do, but it changed my perception about relationships in general and how to love somebody. And as soon as I felt that, I started acting differently toward her. And she could tell right away that I was a different person. She could tell that I had changed. And she liked the changes. By then, however, she had already fallen out of love. She had already sealed her heart shut and didn't feel safe enough to open it back up again. As soon as I felt different, as soon as I changed my behaviors, as soon as I stopped being hurtful, being emotionally abusive, it was too late for her. As I changed, she closed her heart. For good. That was it. I mean, literally for good. She had to do it. She had to protect herself. I call that the threshold, when the victim of emotional abuse reaches that point where they can take no more, and any more will just destroy them. So they reach that point where they either close their heart forever or close it enough and say, this has to stop or else. That's what happens. They reach a threshold where they say, this has to stop or else, or they close their heart permanently. They seal it shut, at least from the person that's been hurtful toward them. They seal it until they're ready to open it again for somebody else or for that person again, but they have to take their own healing journey. The abuser needs to heal. The victim needs to heal. The victim has a lot of healing to do, of course, and the abuser has a lot of changes to go through. I did that one change and it changed everything, but I still had a lot of healing to do. I still had to figure out all this stuff. This was like 15 years ago. I still had to figure out so much. What else am I doing? What else do I do to change or control the people I care about? That's when my healing journey started. And it was hard because that's who I was my entire life. I was that person, the person who believed that's how you're supposed to love someone. I had to experience the loss of many good relationships with great people in order to get to the point where I finally understood myself and I finally understood what was going on. And I finally accepted that I was the common denominator for all my relationship problems and all my problems in life, because I am responsible for the results that I get. Now, if I keep getting terrible results, I can't point the finger at the world and tell them they're wrong. I have to point the finger at myself and ask myself, what are you doing? What are the choices that you're making that are leading to these results? I could say, well, it's their fault, and I could be stuck on it's their fault. Or I could take responsibility for myself and say, you need to do something. You need to either change what you're doing or reflect on what you're doing and figure it out, or maybe you need to honor yourself and get away from a situation that you can't seem to accept. And so that's what I did. The one thing that changed my life was learning that I have boundaries and that I should honor them. Then once I realized that honoring them meant leaving, that caused me to, for the first time ever, consider being accepting and loving and supporting. Because otherwise, what's the other choice? The other choice is to leave. That was the ultimatum I gave myself. Either you're going to be accepting and loving and supporting of this person, or you should get out of their life. Because you're quite damaging. You are doing harm to her. That's the kind of conversation I had with myself. And so I pushed myself against the wall, gave myself the ultimatum. Either you accept her for who she is, because she's never going to change. That was the belief system I chose to adopt. She's never, ever going to change. So you either accept her for who she is and never complain about it because that's who she is, and you're choosing to be accepting. You're choosing to support her happiness, even if you don't like it, even if you disagree with it, because that's what love is about. Either you do that or you should leave. And I didn't want to leave, but the ultimatum worked. The ultimatum I gave myself, where I said, well, I'm either going to accept her or I'm going to leave. That worked because I didn't want to leave. So that meant I have to accept her. And today, that comes easy. It's easy for me to be accepting now because I've learned that being accepting and loving and supporting of someone's happiness, you get the same in return. When you accept somebody for who they are and whatever they do, you are accepting their choices, their decisions on what makes them happy. And when you do that, people you support in that way want to be near you. They want to be close to you. They want to be with people who support their happiness. That's what I've learned. That's one of the most important, huge things I've learned about relationships, is that the more I support my partner, the more supportive they are of me, the more loving they are with me, the stronger the bond is, the longer the relationship lasts, and they want to support my happiness too. And I didn't know any of that. I didn't realize that's how relationships are supposed to work back when I was that person. And I'm not using that as an excuse. I take full responsibility for who I was and how I showed up. I was emotionally abusive. I was that person. And to become the person I am today, I had to do a complete change in my life. I had to figure out how to cope and how to deal with challenges and how to accept people even when they're doing things that really tick me off. And that's not necessarily talking about Asha, my fiance. I'm talking about people in general, becoming more accepting, becoming more unconditionally loving. And I'm not saying that I'm really great at that. I'm just saying it's a practice. It's something I continually practice. And it doesn't mean that I allow people to steamroll me, because now I understand boundaries. So when somebody is crossing the line, I can say, hey, look, you're crossing the line. You're being disrespectful. Hey, you're not treating me very nice. Could you please stop doing that? I may not be that friendly towards certain people, but that's where I go, is that I know that I have boundaries and I'm allowed to honor those boundaries, but I also do what I can to be accepting and supportive of other people's decisions and whatever makes them happy, because who am I to dictate who they want to be? I jumped from being selfish, trying to control people, trying to make people fit a mold of what I wanted them to be, into the space of letting them be who they are and accepting them for who they are, and hoping that we can walk toward the sunset holding hands because they feel the same about me. So to the person who wrote, thank you for sharing all that. I don't know if I answered all your questions, and I hope me sharing my past helps you understand why some people who are abusive will use the silent treatment as a control measure, as a tactic to make you feel bad, make you feel guilty. And like this person wrote, maybe they're telling themselves that they're protecting you, right? My answer to that is yes and no. They may think that by saying what they really think, they're going to be hurtful, so they withhold that. But by withholding it, they're trying to achieve another measure of control, another measure of trying to change you. So if you believe they're trying to protect you, I don't think protect is the right word. I think they're trying to protect themselves because they don't want to make you feel bad so that you'll yell at them, so you'll leave, so you'll honor yourself and make the next right decision for you. When I was doing it, I definitely didn't want to scare her away. I knew that some of the things I was thinking would scare her away, and maybe she'd leave me forever. My fear of abandonment, my fear of rejection kicked in, and I knew that if I said the things that were on my mind, not only would it be mean, I knew that, but it would also scare her away, or at least I believed it would scare her away, causing me to not say anything and feel very stuck not saying anything. Again, it's not an excuse, but that's where I was at the time. So it's not so much they're protecting you, even though there might be a little bit of that. I think it's really about protecting themselves. Because if they said what was really on their mind, you might not be able to handle that and leave. But the truth of the matter is, they either accept you for who you are, they accept you for the decisions that you make, they accept what makes you happy, or they don't. If they don't, they shouldn't be sticking around. They shouldn't be around somebody that they can't accept. That's the philosophy I live by. That's the belief system I've adopted, is that if I can't accept my partner for who they are, then I shouldn't be here, because I'm going to make their life a living hell, and I don't want that. And this is going to sound a little strange and probably not true, but it is true. I would rather see my partner happy without me than unhappy because she's with me. I don't want her to be unhappy with me. I want to see her happy. Seeing her happy makes me smile. Seeing her happy fills my heart. When I got into this relationship, I promised myself that I would never, ever be that person that I used to be, ever again. I would only be a person that accepts her for who she is and what she does and the decisions she makes, because nobody wants to be controlled. Nobody wants to be told what to do. They just want to be appreciated. They want to be validated. They want to know that you're important to them. They want to know that they are loved. They want to know that they can make mistakes and it's okay. They want to know that they are valued. Thank you for joining me today. Thank you to the person who wrote this message. I hope this helps. And I wish you much strength and healing for whatever you're going through. Share this with others that might benefit. Love and Abuse is the official podcast of the Mean Workbook, an assessment and healing guide for difficult relationships. The workbook helps you pinpoint exactly what's going on in your relationship, outlining the behaviors causing you to leave so many interactions feeling bad. Take the assessment in the workbook and gain clarity on what your next best steps are. After you purchase the workbook, you'll get an invite to the private peer support group on Facebook. Visit loveandabuse.com for more information. And if you've discovered that you are doing the hurtful behaviors to someone that you care about and you'd like to change that about yourself, sign up for the Healed Being program over at healedbeing.com. I have gone through the healing journey myself. I have done the work. And if you need to do the work, go to healedbeing.com, join the course. It comes with a private online group where I and others will give you direct support. It's time to stop making those you love feel bad. The first 4 lessons are free. Head over to healedbeing.com. And just a reminder, if you're looking for a safer way to listen to this show where all the titles to the episodes are changed, click on the Safe Listening button on the podcast page over at loveandabuse.com. This show exists to remind you that you are not alone and you're not going crazy. You deserve to be treated with respect and kindness. You deserve honesty and sincerity. You deserve to be treated as worthy and significant, because you are. We'll talk again soon.